and welcome to Let's Talk About It with Taylor Nolan. I am your host, Taylor, and today I am here with another family member in the Bachelor world. I'm here with Kayla. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Taylor.
Yeah, of course. I'm excited to talk today. We're going to get into some anxiety stuff. And so thank you for being open and willing to come on and talk about this stuff because it's not always easy.
No, it isn't, but I appreciate you having me. I haven't spoken to anybody about this, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. Well, thank you.
This is my session event. But yeah, I think it's something I've faced for, 8 years, ever since I was in high school. But you learn to overcome it on your own sometimes, and I think that's what I did.
Yeah. So first time talking about it in a public way?
In a public way, yes.
Yeah. Okay. And I know you've talked a little bit about it on your social media. And I'm curious what that experience has been like for you when you have talked about it.
The number one thing for me when I talk about something personal like this is I think about if it's going to affect other people and what is my boyfriend going to think, what's my family going to think, because I never want them to feel blamed. But it's something that I've wanted to speak about for a while because everyone's always seen one side of me, the happy, positive, optimistic side, which I love being because that is who I am. But there's a inner,
there's other parts to you.
There's other parts to me too.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, so it was really, liberating, and I did it a couple weeks ago.
Okay. Well, amazing. I mean, thank you for doing it. I'm sure that there were a lot of people that could relate to it. And again, you always have amazing content. And so it was easy to read and was super cute. And I loved how you laid it out with easy ways to kind of cope with anxiety when it does come up. But this kind of started at the beginning here.
Totally.
You said this kind of started coming up 8 years ago. What did that look like? What was going on?
So, to give you a little background, I grew up in Ohio, Cleveland, Ohio, but my parents moved 17 times before college.
Yeah.
So I moved every year until high school. And then junior and senior year of high school, I went to boarding school. And I lived alone, and I just felt a lot of inner pressure to perform and be okay on my own, even though I was alone. And so I didn't know what I was feeling. I just thought it was just hormones and something I naturally went through. But it wasn't until college that I really started feeling more and more anxiety. And I think it relates to pressure and stress. I think the climax of my anxiety happened after I filmed the show. I don't want to make this all about the show because that isn't who I am to my core, but it's
a big experience. It impacts you in a lot of ways.
Exactly. Yeah, it was a life event. And I started getting anxiety because I didn't want to disappoint my parents who, before I went on the show, they said don't disappoint us, you know? And I think I had this fear of disappointment.
Yeah.
And when I got back, I remember, having all these feelings and then not knowing what to do with it and feeling like the world didn't understand me. And so I lived in Boston at the time after The Bachelor, and I would just, be alone in my own apartment and deal with it that way.
Yeah. And so what did it look like? How did you know that you were experiencing, some severe, intense anxiety? I mean, we all kind of, feeling anxious is a normal feeling that we all experience.
Yes.
But how did you know kind of when it started to really present itself as this severe anxiety?
Okay. So I guess the deepest anxiety I've ever felt was after my second season of The Bachelor. Fast forwarding even more time. This was Bachelor in Paradise. I filmed it over the summer, and I remember getting back and coming back to my apartment, and there would be 5 days at a time where I wouldn't leave my bed.
Yeah.
I was that sad, where I felt no matter how much I had to get done, I couldn't do it. It would never get done. So why even try? And so I felt like my bed in my studio apartment in New York City was an island and no one could reach me. And it got really embarrassing. People don't really know this, but I let my house get really cluttered and I almost created a wall around myself physically on the floor and on my shelves. And I just felt like I was alone and there was no one to talk to.
Yeah.
And then that's when I knew, and it was just how I felt in my heart, and that anxiety and that pressure, like I could never release it. And so I knew it was a mental thing.
Yeah.
And honestly, that happened it lasted for 6-7 months. And that was really up until last January.
Yeah.
I call it my blue period, because I don't think I get depressed. I would never use something as severe as that unless I'm diagnosed. But I definitely went through blue period where I would get fits of anxiety every other week, or just not be able to like let go of this pressure in my heart, and I'd want to be alone and isolate myself.
Yeah.
And to get out of that, I tried to do the wrong things, which was I tried to find answers from other people.
Yes.
And so I would go on dates, starting that whole 6-7 months, and I would go on dates with, like, as if it was a sport, and I went on like 4 or 5 dates a week, and I would ask each man at the end of the date, like, so how do you think I did? It was our first date, and I'd be like, so what did you think of me?
Yeah.
And
searching for that approval,
exactly.
that validation.
And I would want them to say what I can improve on. That was always one thing I would want to walk away with, like, what do you think I could do better? But literally, guys have no idea. Yeah. And also, it's the first time they're meeting you.
Yeah.
So I don't know why I was giving them all of that credit.
Yeah, you're giving their opinion a lot of weight into what you were worth.
100%. And I think that's also because I was used to the whole year before that having other people dictate how my life was going to be lived.
Yeah.
So I was so confused.
Especially, I mean, when you're on the show, you are given constant feedback. Constant feedback.
It feels like a personal therapist. Feels like someone that knows you. Your heart is always with you.
Yes. And then you get the feedback of all of America, and you get that comparison as well. And I think that contributes a lot to the, like, what can I do better? How can I be better?
Yes.
Because I'm trying to be this, and this is what I've been told is better.
And and what have I been doing wrong? But then I realized I was blaming myself for, for nothing that I did wrong. For being who I am. And I will say, like, anxiety is a personally induced sometimes. Or it's exacerbated.
Yeah.
It's nothing that really we can't deal with without looking inside ourselves.
Yeah.
That wasn't very eloquent, if you want to cut that out. Sorry.
Okay. It's okay.
Like, trying to think of the words.
Words are hard. And, like, talking about something like this, I think, again, there's a lot of that pressure, especially when talking about anything related to mental health.
And I'm not medically trained, and so I don't.
Yeah. You're just, and you're sharing about something very personal right now.
Yeah.
So
thank you.
Totally okay that it's not, 100% right. And honestly, there is no right or wrong. I think it's really interesting to hear. I think I can relate to some of the things that you're sharing.
Yeah.
I think there was a period of my life in dating where I felt very similarly of, like, okay, I wouldn't ever ask them that explicitly, but I would always reflect on that a lot of, like, what could I have done better? Like, how can I be better? And going on the dates was a way to, like, fill that void, to fill, like, to try to, ease that anxiety with the comfort of connection.
Yes.
And that's a very dangerous road to go down.
It is very dangerous. And then I think there's always a point where maybe not you hit a low, but where you really make a decision to turn your life around.
Yeah.
And, and then after that, I literally, did the blogger thing and made a list of all the little buckets that I wanted to fix, which first was my home. It's like, your home is a reflection of your heart. And if it's cluttered, then your mind is cluttered.
Yeah.
And so I simplified, and I hired an interior organizer, and she helped me get rid of everything.
Yeah. Wow.
And I felt good again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's definitely one way to cope and like to clean up your life, literally, physically cleaning up your life. Throughout any of this time, you know, even from when like you were moving to a different place every year, like that's a lot, especially in all of those different developmental stages. Was there ever a time during any of that where like you sought professional help or professional help was like provided for you?
Yeah, in college, I went to BC, and my junior year, I went and saw a therapist, which in my family, like, wasn't really done. My parents are very religious, and I love them for it. But they always said that we could deal with our issues as a family, and we always talk through everything. And so listening to an outsider, I think was almost viewed as wrong a little bit. So when I went to see a therapist, I felt so much release.
Yeah.
And I just felt kind of like understood quickly by another person, which was really nice.
That's really good. I'm glad that was there, and I'm glad that it seemed like it was a positive experience. I think that's really common, though, that there is this stigma around, you know, seeking help because it's, you know, your problem or it's a problem with the family to deal with. But sometimes it takes a little bit more than that.
It does. I totally agree. And even moving to New York City again, I recommend anyone who moves for the first time, they should get a therapist to a big city, because there's a lot of new factors you have to take into account.
Yeah. And so is there anything that you can, you know, from thinking back to that like you learned like a way to cope from that, or things that you took away from that experience from when you were in college and seeking that help?
Visualization was a big tip. They used to say when I had like anxiety, like severe anxiety, where I felt like I couldn't, you know, control my own body. And they would just say like, lie down and visualize a drop of water, like one at a time, dripping on your head, and taking a deep breath with that, and just releasing, pressure and feeling the beads of water, like dissipate on your face as if that's the pressure. And I still do it, and it really helps. Yeah.
That's, I mean, beautiful and very relaxing to think about. Yeah.
Yeah. And what's nice is you can take that with you wherever you are.
Yeah. And this is something that you still practice today to deal with it. And there were some other things that you had kind of shared about what it looked like, the deep anxiety, but it almost kind of sounds like that was a little bit of depression too. And I know you said that you don't like, don't like that word or don't
I don't want to identify with that word, but you're right. Maybe it was. And I never talked to anyone about it. So I didn't like, unless someone validated it, I would never put that word upon myself.
Yeah. And I mean, you can certainly experience a period of depression and not necessarily be clinically depressed. You know, there's different subcategories of major depressive disorder. And one of those is like episodic. So episodic, however you want to say it.
Yeah.
And I know it's very common post-show for those 6 months post-show that like it's really fucking hard to do things sometimes. And it's really hard to get out of like that bubble of you're not good enough, of the comparison of, you know, where do you find your worth? Where does your life go from here? And really just feeling kind of paralyzed with all of it. And, you know, at least from my experience and from hearing how you described it, you know, with not being able to get out of bed, not being able to like, just no motivation to do anything.
No.
Like, I can relate. The whole January, February, March. I mean, by March, I kind of was like getting out doing stuff, but I was in bed all day.
Yeah.
All day. And I'd wake up crying and just,
Me too. 100% me too. And I kind of appreciate you saying that, because I didn't know that it was like episodic. I thought you were just diagnosed, and that's I've seen depression in my family, and I would never compare myself to that, but maybe it probably was episodic and really hard to deal with.
Yeah. And I mean, especially when you know, again, feeling depressed is a feeling that you can feel just like feeling anxious, but not necessarily generalized anxiety disorder, not necessarily major depressive disorder. But when it spans for that long of a time and is that consistent and is, you know, following with a bunch of other criteria for the disorder, you know, I think it can be hard because there is that stigma and you don't necessarily want to be attached to what that label is.
Right.
And there might be some pushback against that, especially I can see where like if, you know, if with your family, there's already that pressure there, it's not disappoint. And that maybe if there was a diagnosis of that would be like, I'm a disappointment. But that, you know, again, with those, like, there's treatment available. There's things you can do. Like, it's not necessarily a forever thing, depending on what, you know, the diagnosis is. But, and I think you've already kind of been able to see that by knowing that, like, you can come out of that blue period.
Yes.
And I love that you call it a blue period. You know, one thing is, like, through my background, you know, working with kids a little bit. I didn't really do a lot of work with kids, but some.
Yeah.
And even with adults, I prefer doing it this way where, like, you refer to the emotions as different colors.
I love
as opposed
that.
to, like, negative or positive. It's just like, no, these are just colors.
Yes.
And to say that you're, like, feeling blue or, you know, I'm starting to feel really red right now. Like,
that's so funny. I actually say that sometimes, like, I'm feeling gray, which is like, it's not happy or sad. It's just blah.
Yeah.
And that's not blue. It's gray.
yes, there's a difference.
But normally I'm a yellow. It's my favorite color.
Yes. Yeah. And, but I mean, I love that you were able to, like, look at that as, like, this was a blue period in my life. And sometimes you'll have blue days. And it's interesting because when I think of blue, I think of, like, feeling depressed.
Yeah.
As opposed to, like, feeling really anxious. I don't know what color I would think for anxious.
Maybe it's a shade of blue.
It might be a shade of blue. For me, it almost feels a little bit like an orange.
Yeah.
Like an overwhelming orange.
I could see that.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, anxious is like a little flutter and there's like action and that's almost red.
Yeah. But speaking of colors, there's this, like, blue mug that I just got in my FabFitFun Spring Editors box. And it's a Ayesha Curry mug, and it says, I'd rather stay in bed. And totally goes along with this whole blue feeling. But I'm absolutely obsessed with this mug. And also in the FabFitFun Spring Editor box, there's this eyeshadow from Tarte, and it has, like, these beautiful shades of nude that, like, I love and I'm obsessed with, and it's, like, the perfect little size too. But what I love about these boxes is that they're actually all delivered in full-size items of fashion, of beauty, of home and fitness, and even wellness products too. So don't worry if you missed the seasonal box, because here's this great Spring Editors box with favorites from spring and other past seasons. The Spring Editors box has a lot more customization options, from a clutch to eyeshadow to tote to lip gloss. Getting my first box was super exciting, and I love every time I get a new box because I'm like, what's going to be inside it? And I know, Kayla, you get these too, and they are so fun to have and so fun to, like, open up, and even all the products in them, like, I use them on a regular basis. So if you guys are slacking and haven't signed up yet, it's not too late. You can use my code to get $10 off your first box. Use promo code Taylor for $10 off the Editor's box. That's $39.99 for over $200 worth of value. Go to fabfitfun.com to subscribe and use my code Taylor. Try FabFitFun today. Go to fabfitfun.com to subscribe and start getting in the box for a life well lived. Use promo code Taylor to get $10 off your first box. That's products valued at $200 for only $39.99. What a bargain. Again, you guys should go to fabfitfun.com and use my code Taylor to get $10 off your first FabFitFun box. But I'm glad that the colors brought that up. So now you guys can go to fabfitfun.com and use my code Taylor to get $10 off your first FabFitFun box. But getting back to the show, I do want to say I'm really thankful that you're, like, talking about this, and hopefully with me sharing a little bit, it makes it more normal, because I think,
I appreciate it 100% because I haven't talked about this with anybody, and to hear your perspective, and you do have a background that's like clinically trained, which is really refreshing to have somebody that knows what they're talking about.
Yeah. Well, thanks.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I didn't necessarily experience the same kind of pressure that you've spoken about. And I can totally see where that would lead you to, and then in addition, the experience of the show, but to experiencing, this anxiety and depression. What other ways, like when you were younger, did you cope with it? I know we talked about like the dating part a little bit, but like how, and I imagine, I moved a few times. It wasn't every year, but I moved at very like critical points in my life, and it was a lot.
Yes.
It was a lot.
It was a lot. For me, like as a child dealing with change constantly, I always turned to my parents, and I'm so lucky because they were my foundation. And, some of us can't help who our parents are, but I'm really lucky that my parents were always very open with me.
Yeah.
And they always made it sound like a family decision. And they said that if we, move here, there's a great adventure ahead, and together it'll make us stronger. And so it was always a positive thing to me. And I still look at change is a good thing. And that's why I almost want to move out of my small studio apartment now, because I see as change as like growing. And our family was constantly growing as a team and as a unit. And so I think as a child, the best thing to do is talk it out. And we'd talk every day. And so I'm really lucky that I had that open relationship with my family. And when you were asking about in college what other steps they recommended to deal with anxiety, I think there were 4 main ones that I talk about on my Instagram. First one was kind of visualization. They spoke about. Another one was feeling something like physical. So whether I lay flat on the ground and feel, and just focus on that touch with the ground, or walking outside.
It's kind of like mindfulness.
Yes,
practicing.
mindfulness and like feeling the wind on you. And then second is asking yourself if your feeling is rational.
Reality check.
Right, exactly. Like, why am I feeling tension that my ex-boyfriend is dating someone new? Like, why is that giving me anxiety? Is this rational? No, it's not.
Yeah.
The third thing was, just put on music and keep moving and being productive.
Yeah.
And taking action, whether it's going on a run or just feeling, and then once you're out of that little blue period, that you feel like you've checked something off and you can be proud of something. There's a book that Nick, my boyfriend, actually recommended to me, and it's called Making Your Bed. And I read it, and it's really short. If you're out there, you have to read this book, Making Your Bed. It's by a Marine or a Navy SEAL. I forget which one. I apologize. Yeah. But anyway, he said that one of the secrets of success is making your bed every day. And the reason of that is because you feel like you got one task done. Even though it takes about 15 seconds, you can give yourself a pat on the back. And when you go to bed at night, you can feel like you took care of yourself. So no matter what you can do, the greatest thing you can do for yourself is make your bed, which was very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that.
Those are
It's very simple. There's a meme that I don't even know if you'd call it a meme. It's a quote. It's a photo that I saved on Instagram. That's like, sometimes, it's okay if all you did was breathe today.
I love that.
That's like, if you just focused on your breathing for a little bit throughout the day, that like sometimes that's the most you can do. And sometimes that's okay to give yourself that.
But yeah, because honestly, sometimes it is really hard to actually be productive and like get anything done in the day. I mean, especially like going to the doctor, like if you have to go do a test at the doctor or something, like sometimes that it just can feel like so much to be doing in a day. Like you have to, schedule an appointment. It's going to be really expensive, and all that can just feel so overwhelming. I'm really glad that for my testing that I need done, I've been able to use Everlywell. It's a at-home health testing company. You can get a variety of tests, from like food sensitivity to metabolism to a thyroid test. They're all like private, simple, and they're done through like, legit certified labs. So it's like information you can actually trust. And it's super easy. Like you just pick which test you want to do. It gets shipped to your doorstep, and then you collect your sample, and mail it back out, and then in a few days you get your results back. I took the food sensitivity test and gained a whole lot of insight from that about my body, and it was just such a quick, easy way to do this kind of testing when there's so many other things going on in your life. So, and I do actually have a code for them. You guys can use code Taylor to take 15% off your first order at everlywell.com to do these at-home tests and to learn more about your health. Again, you can head to everlywell.com and use code Taylor for 15% off your first order. So, I mean, whether it's, taking an at-home test or making your bed, I really like that. I feel like that can be synonymous with making your bed, just taking a few deep breaths,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. You felt like there's something that you can control.
Yeah. And the pressure piece that you spoke about, I think I kind of want to dig into a little bit.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, let's do it.
Because I'm just thinking, I think a lot of people, when they think of anxiety, that there's this overwhelming feeling, and that oftentimes that is associated with a feeling of pressure.
Yes.
I've gotten a lot of letters from people who are like in high school and in college and are like, there's so much pressure to do this and do that, and I feel like I need to be this. And it sounds like, especially throughout your life, and then even going on the show, that pressure of like, I can't disappoint other people.
Yes.
Like that would cause so much anxiety. And where you think that like stems from, or where you can like remember to feeling like, you have to live up to something, and what that something is even?
I mean, in terms of pressure, I think you learn a lot of these traits from your parents.
Yeah.
To go back to I don't mean to talk about my parents all the time.
No, they play a big role. I mean, Freud had some things right.
Yeah. In terms of development, they're your role models. They set the example for you. And both of my parents were role models for success.
Yeah.
And they said, even if you're a garbage man, you're going to be the best garbage man there is. And you could choose whatever life you want, but you're going to be the best at it. And that's what my parents always instilled in me. And so I really took that to heart, and I always wanted to show gratitude because they gifted me such a great, loving life that I never wanted to let them down. I always wanted to be happy, and like I moved a lot. And my brother, was severely like depressed in high school and in college, and to scary levels where I knew that my parents were always worrying about him. Yeah. And so I never wanted them to worry about me. So that's why I was always the happy one, always the positive one. And it felt good to be that. And so I never let them see my flaws. And so that pressure to be perfect, I think, started there. Yeah. Just seeing the contrast and the yin and the yang between my brother and I. And I love my brother. I think he's overcome a lot because he moving just was different for him. It was a lot harder. He was a foot shorter than everyone, and everyone picked on him. I think, there was a lot of pressure. In high school, I saw it as pressure. Now I see it as developmental, and
it's like an opportunity for development.
Exactly. I think it was good for me to really stand up and face that inner pressure in high school. So I don't look at it as a bad thing now, but I did feel pressure starting then. Yeah.
And it makes sense too that with seeing the depression in your brother, that you would, that essentially becomes your image of what depression is.
Yes.
And knowing that that's not what you're going through, it's like, no, that's not me. I'm not, yes. I'm not that. So this like disassociation towards, maybe even the feeling of feeling depressed. And, it's, I just can't, like, I feel for you in a way that like, that's a lot to overcompensate for, and that like,
I almost felt like I was holding my parents together.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I know that people don't realize this. They have way more pressure than we do.
Yeah.
They're they made this life.
Yeah, they're
and
responsible for human life.
They want to make sure that you turn out well. And so I
Yes.
never wanted my parents to feel burdened by me. And so I always tried to take the burden off of them.
Yeah. And that's not your responsibility.
Thank you. You would be a great producer on the show.
No, I've always said that.
Seriously,
to
this
my
is
producer.
just in case anybody is out there, this is exactly what producers did. We did stuff called ITMs, which are called in the moments, which are little interviews.
They feel like little therapy sessions.
Yes, and
They
you
do.
have like little on-camera interviews, like 4 or 5 times a day.
Yeah.
And this is exactly what you did for 1 hour: is talk about whatever you wanted to.
Yeah.
And whatever made you who you are today. And so anyway, you'd be a great producer on The Bachelor.
Thanks. I don't know if I could do it with like the motives that they. I don't know. I don't know. It'd be
At least this part
Yes.
would be great.
Yes. But yeah, I just I want to like hug you and like let you know that, especially like Kayla in high school and in middle school and in college, and I'm sure you're in a different place now, but that like that's not your responsibility.
Totally.
That like I want for you to just be able to feel however you feel. And if you feel sad and if you feel depressed and if you feel like, you're a blogger, maybe you're not the best blogger, but like that's okay. Like that you're still good enough. Like you're still you and you still have value and you're still like worthy of love, and that doesn't make you any less if you're not the best.
Totally. And I think that whole period of my, like in high school, I felt really sad and that pressure, and in high school, I felt that pressure to perform and be perfect.
Yeah.
And I think that resurfaced when the show came about.
Absolutely.
And that's when all those feelings came up again, because at the same time, a lot of people don't know this, but I was almost considered to be bachelorette.
Yeah.
And so every dress that JoJo wore, I had tried on, and I went through this whole 3-month process with trainers and flying out to LA. And not that I, all of my hopes and dreams were set on that, but when you have certain expectations, you're of course going to be disappointed when it goes the other way. And I'm completely happy for JoJo and how my life turned out. But I think it definitely affected me internally, thinking that I wasn't good enough.
Yeah.
And like, what did I do wrong that I wasn't chosen to be this person?
Absolutely.
And that still lasted into going into Paradise, because I still wanted answers.
Yeah.
And then going into Paradise, I will say I wasn't the person I wanted to be. And so I let myself down. And that's when I came back from Paradise, when I really felt that blue period, that anxiety, debilitating anxiety constantly, where I felt, and I'd felt hate, whether it was from a person or from the world. I'd never felt intense hate before. Yeah. And I just
Especially
thought,
because you've always been this like very yellow,
Yes.
happy, positive person.
Thank
that people
you.
aren't gonna like put that on you. And in a way, I almost see where that could be like a protective defense
100%.
mechanism
Yeah.
to avoid that kind of hate. But yeah, after Paradise, then you started experiencing that
again. And then I've tried to find validation through other people. And then one day, honestly, I don't know if people don't want to hear this, but I went to church and I found answers in a higher power, and I'm just so much happier. I was so much happier because of that.
Yeah.
And I mean, if there's one thing that I leave your audience with, or you with, like that I learned as the greatest lesson in life that I learned, is that there's pillars in life. And basically, I visualize each significant moment that, like, there are periods in your life where you make a big decision, where you can go left or right, and that is a pillar. And then there's life before that pillar and life after that pillar, and you control who you are, and you can make new pillars and be that new person. And so, for example, there's life before the show and life after the show.
Yep.
And then I was really sad because I didn't see anything else. And then there's life before I got baptized and life after I got baptized. And then I was really happy. And then there's life before I met Nick, and now there's life after I met Nick. And he is my most recent pillar, and I've never been happier in my life. But anyway, you can redefine who you are by making a new decision that betters yourself.
Yeah, that you have control over you, and that you
100%.
can empower yourself to make those decisions, to be the best version of you, to, you know, step forward in a new path in your life. And so it sounds like this experience with church and with religion was a way to help, like, come to perhaps a different part or a different path for Kayla post-show.
Yes.
And post-blue period.
100%.
Yeah. Can you share a little bit about that and like what that was like and what that's done for you?
Totally. You want to talk about religion?
I mean,
is that a thing?
How has it impacted you?
Oh my God.
There's nothing, you know, off boundaries or off limits here.
I will say, Taylor, normally it's so taboo to talk about religion. And
that's why we're here to talk about it. We're here to talk about the taboo, Kayla.
I mean, I've never wanted to offend anybody, and it's just my personal beliefs. But
and even if you do offend someone, that's totally okay because you're speaking your truth.
Totally.
And
I'm proud of it.
That without having to censor yourself to help make other people feel comfortable. Because if someone else feels uncomfortable, that's for them to deal with.
Yes. Totally
so
true.
Speak your truth.
Thanks, girl. So in terms of religion, I was a little background in high school. I just was very rebellious. My parents had brought me up in a strict Christian household. I'd gone to church every weekend, and I wasn't feeling it because I felt like sometimes they would put God before our family in a way, and to me that didn't make sense. But everyone has their own interpretation of religion. So when I rebelled in high school, I'd really just closed the door on religion, and it wasn't until I moved to New York City for the first time, which was 2 years ago, that I kind of wanted a little consistency in my life.
Yeah.
So I found a church called Hillsong in New York City that's amazing. And every Sunday I would go to church, even though I didn't really know why I was going. I just loved the inspirational speeches. The songs were great, and the people were nice. And even though I wasn't fully believing in God, I wanted something that I could look forward to. So I went, and then after a year of going, there was one sermon that I felt like God was really speaking to me.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh. I was like crying the whole time. I was like, this is why I've been coming. I've been waiting for this moment. This is why I'm supposed to be here. And anyway, a little funny story before that. I was at a diner where I asked the waiter to charge my cell phone. So he plugged it into the wall, and it was right before church on Sunday. And then I ended up going to church and forgetting my cell phone in the restaurant. And then I was like, oh shit, I should go get it. I don't want anyone to steal my phone. But I felt like it was a really good message. And so I was kind of like feeling this inner conversation with God, saying like, I kind of don't want to lose my phone, Lord. Would you hate me if I went? Yeah. And he was like, Kayla, you better stay in that seat. You better stay in that seat now. And I was like, I'm going to go. I'm going to be bad. Yeah. So I went to go get my phone, and I get out of the charger, and it was dead because they hadn't even plugged it in. And I was like, mother effer, you're kidding me. Yeah. And then I was like, that's God saying like, you should have listened to me. You should stay in your seat. And so I left the phone in there and just trusted him and let it charge and went back to church. And then the rest of the sermon was amazing. And it felt like it was meant to be for me. And so, you know, for people who say like, I don't know if I hear God, I don't know if he's talking to me, like that is one moment where I felt like he was speaking to me and saying like, you should have listened. And I was like, okay. But it's little things like that where I felt like my relationship has grown stronger, and I feel protected by him. And especially when I used to ask for answers from other men, like, what am I doing wrong? Now I just pray, and even though sometimes I don't hear a voice, sometimes a song will come on and it'll speak to me. Yeah. And kind of funny, one more anecdote about this.
Definitely.
When I was in the car deciding, so my dad has always been against doing Paradise.
Okay.
Because he thinks it's the most shameful thing on earth. He's like, it's so embarrassing. Yeah. It's just a joke. People don't take you seriously. It's not really for love. And I was like, I'm going to prove you wrong, Dad. And I didn't know where I was going with my life, but I was in the car arguing with him about this. And he had finally seen, oh, sorry. Do you mind if I started the story over?
Okay. This is before Paradise or?
So sorry. So I had done one season of Paradise.
Okay.
and I was debating doing a second season of Paradise.
Okay.
And he was like, my dad said, you didn't learn the first time. You didn't learn that this show is horrible for you. It's embarrassing. You won't have a good experience. And anyway, I just wanted to feel like I was in control of my life. So whether I said yes or no, that it was my decision.
And still kind of that like rebellious side coming in a little bit too, maybe, of like,
Yes.
let me show you.
Totally. And, you know, my dad's a really understanding guy, and we've always been, we're like best friends. We've been able to talk through everything. And so at the end of the conversation, he was like, you know, Kayla, I love you, and you've been in control of your life, and I know you're going to make the best decision for you, no matter what. And then while we were in the car on the radio, there was a song that came on called Death to the Bachelor. And I literally looked at my dad and was like, do you hear this? Like, what's going on right now? And I feel like that was a sign for me, too.
Yeah.
You know, that was God talking to me saying, like, it's time for you to put this to rest. And it was really validating. And I've always felt free from the show since that moment in life.
Yeah. And that for you felt like a form of like God's intervention.
100%.
Or like a message from God. I guess.
Totally.
Yeah.
And since then, I've just felt a lot more at peace.
Yeah. Well, and I'm glad to hear where it sounds like the relationship that you've developed with God, almost in a way like to cope, I guess, with a lot of the things that have happened and to better get in touch with yourself, I guess. And a little bit of what I hear is like having trust in what you're doing. Like the messages from him almost validate for you to like trust your gut in a way.
Yes.
And that you have this sense of like protection where you were maybe trying to protect yourself and wanted someone else to be there to like lift that responsibility and to lift that pressure off of you.
You are so right. I didn't even think of it that way, but I think, you know, building this relationship with the church, I've really felt more confidence in my decisions.
Yeah.
And that's what I've always wanted. And honestly, like that made me the happiest version of myself, to be confident every day.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, for people who are looking for someone, not that life's about that. That's what I think attracted Nick, was that I was so confident and happy. And whether I was with somebody or not with somebody, I still felt, you know, myself and felt strong.
Yeah. And that now the relationship that you were developing wasn't to fill a void or to give you validation, but was like just pure connection.
Totally. This was really awesome, Taylor. I feel like a lot of breakthroughs right now. I don't know if you have badges, but I feel like we all deserve a badge right now.
5 stars.
Yes.
A big gold star.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think like, I mean, I've learned a lot, and I'm like processing some of like my own personal stuff through your story right now, and like reflecting on areas where, you know, I could practice some of the things that you've talked about. And so I find that helpful. And I'm sure like some listeners are also doing that now. But, you know, I think for me, it's always, and even I was actually going back and like looking at some of my like grad school reflection papers in terms of like being a practicing therapist, and maybe some students out there who are listening now could relate to this. But I reflected on like I had such this impatience with people that I felt like I couldn't get to know, or people that I felt like I couldn't understand.
Yeah.
And I felt like when I watched you on the show, I didn't feel like I had a connection with you, and I didn't feel like I like could relate to you.
I know.
And
I feel like a lot of people feel that.
Yeah, and they might have. And I think for me, like, and I mean, they aired it a little bit on Women's Tell All and didn't really air a lot of what actually happened in my season. But there was, you know, this relationship with D-Lo and I where like she, you know, was kind of presenting similarly to you of like very yellow, very happy, very positive. And for me, I have a very different personality where I'm like just very transparent. Like some days it really fucking sucks. And I'm just like, you know what? No, just no. And I can be like a little harsh sometimes. And that's just like me trying to be transparent with like my emotions and coming to the terms and like releasing that sense of impatience with people and just developing a like curious desire for understanding. And so I think like this has been really helpful for me to like see the other sides of you, because I can't, it's hard for me to like connect when all I see is the yellow.
Yes.
And
I get that.
yeah. And so like, I really value and I really appreciate like you, because in a way it is letting those walls down. Mm-hmm. It's letting the walls of the yellow down.
Yep. Putting them in, they're going to take a break.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then it's just everything else.
Yeah.
And I will say, I've always felt like, I know I'm an extrovert and like an ENFJ, some call it, but I think
I'm an INFJ.
I think I'm kind of an INFJ. Like, I do well in one-on-one conversations. Like
Same.
I love connecting with people. Like, I want to hear everyone's deepest, darkest desires,
Yeah.
but I don't want to do it in a group of 30 people or even like 10 sometimes feels overwhelming. So when we always interact at parties, I feel like it's really hard to get to know each other.
Yeah, I agree.
So I apologize because I know that's my fault too.
No, not at all. Not.
Yeah.
I'm not even.
Yeah.
Don't apologize.
Okay.
It's. I think that's why it is so important to like develop that curiosity and like to really just try to actually get to know people one-on-one, because you don't always see that on a freaking TV show, and B, in group settings, because not everyone feels, the most comfortable, like just being totally transparently themselves. And that's always a process that like I value so much, of like getting to know someone and like letting those walls down. And it means a lot that like, we get to do it, but then also that like we're both open to sharing it with whoever knows how many people on here.
Totally.
And I think it's amazing that, you're able to do this in a point of your life where you feel like you are a really great version of yourself, and you've reached that place of like feeling really confident in who you are. And, I think having that also kind of empowers you to be able to like share it and feel good about it. And hopefully you feel
100%.
good about.
Oh, I totally feel good about sharing it. Yeah, no, thank you. I feel like this was a big breath of fresh air, and I've wanted to speak about this for a long time, but I didn't know anyone would want to hear it.
Yeah.
But you're right. I feel like now I'm just in a happy place where I feel like I know the ending. Like this is my ending. Mm-hmm. And so I know how I got through it, and hopefully it helps other people. And, I'm really thankful because you are the one that made the platform for it.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So thank you. This has been really awesome.
Yeah.
And your whole, I could see why you were really good at what you do.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Gonna make me cry. For people who like want to learn more about you or like check you out, you want to let people know where they can find you.
So I have a blog called withlovekayla.com, and I know a lot of people think my name's confusing to spell, but it's Caila. And my handle is also Kayla Quinn. So you can find me, and hopefully I can brighten your day on a normal basis. And if not, we could talk about anxiety and other stuff too.
Yeah, absolutely. And like for me, I mean, bias my own personal opinion. I would totally encourage you to share, more of that, like more of those other colors.
Yeah.
And I think you'll be pleasantly surprised at people's reactions to you.
Yeah.
And I think like it can be so empowering for someone else just to hear that like someone that they look up to on social media who, is this very happy, successful, beautiful, smart person also has days where like feels like shit.
Yeah.
Like
totally.
I just think that there's something like so powerful in the authenticity of that. And it doesn't always feel comfortable, but that's where like I always try to encourage like lean into the discomfort, like something Brene Brown talks about all the time. And like part of me going on the show was like, I'm going to lean into the discomfort of how freaking vulnerable this is going to be and how much control I have to let go of and all the anxiety that's going to come up.
Amen, sister. I feel ya.
Yes. So thank you so much for sharing and talking with me.
Of course. Thank you, Taylor.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kayla, for talking with me, and thank you guys for listening. I would love to hear what you guys think of the episode. You guys can leave a review on iTunes and let me know what you're taking away from this week's episode. Definitely keep writing emails at ask.letstalkaboutit@gmail.com. And you can also follow the pod on Instagram at letstalkaboutit_podcast. Thanks so much, you guys. Have a great week, and I'll talk to you next time.
This podcast
podcast is brought to you by Wave Podcast Network. Check out all of our shows, including the Brain Candy Podcast, I Don't Get It, Babes and Babies, Coffee Convos, and Let's Talk About It.